September 26th, 2002. A man collecting acorns on Weryong Mountain stops mid-step. Something pale juts from the earth beneath the brush. He kneels down. Then he sees it, a small human skull, and then another, and another. 5 skulls in total. 5 small skeletons, tangled together in the dirt. Their clothes were still wrapped around them, knotted in ways that made no sense. These were not the remains of children who had simply gotten lost. These were the Frog Boys, 5 elementary school students who vanished from this exact mountain. 11 years earlier, over 300,000 police officers had searched for them. Helicopters had scanned these slopes. Volunteers had combed every ridge, every valley, every stream. And yet, the boys had been here the entire time, lying just 350 meters from the nearest residential area, waiting to be found. But the question that shattered a nation was not where they had been. It was what had been done to them. March 26, 1991. Daegu, South Korea. It was a national holiday. Local council election day. Schools were closed. Parents were heading to polling stations. For the children of Sangsadong, a working-class neighborhood in the Dalsong district, it was a rare, free day. 5 boys made a plan that morning. They would hike up nearby Weryong Mountain to catch salamander eggs. It was a common pastime for kids in the area. The mountain was right there. A familiar, everyday landmark. The 5 boys were Woo Kyo-won, age 9, Jo Ho-yeon, age 9, Kim Yong-gyu, age 10, Park Seon-in, age 10, and the oldest, Kim Jong-sik, age 13. They were neighborhood friends. They attended different schools, but they all lived within blocks of each other. Their parents saw nothing unusual about the outing. Weryong Mountain was not remote wilderness. It was a low, accessible hill, surrounded by residential areas. Children played there regularly. The boys left their homes between 9 and 10 in the morning. Some told their parents they would be back by lunch. Others said nothing at all. It was just a quick trip up the hill. But lunchtime came and went. Then the afternoon passed. By evening, the first parents began to worry. They called each other. None of the boys had come home. They walked to the base of the mountain and called out the children's names. Silence answered them. By nightfall, the police were contacted. Officers conducted an initial search of the mountain trails. They found nothing. No footprints. No belongings. No signs of disturbance. The search expanded the next day, and the day after that. Within a week, the case had become a national crisis. 5 children, all vanishing simultaneously from a mountain surrounded by houses in broad daylight, on a day when the streets were full of voters. How was that even possible? Someone must have seen something. Someone must have heard something. But no one had. The boys had simply walked up the mountain, and the mountain had swallowed them whole. The scale of the search was unprecedented. Within days, the Frog Boys case became the largest missing persons investigation in South Korean history. President Roh Tae-woo personally ordered a nationwide mobilization. Over 300,000 police officers were deployed to Daegu. Military units joined the effort. Helicopters circled above Weryong Mountain with thermal imaging equipment. Thousands of civilian volunteers combed the hillside, walking shoulder to shoulder through dense brush. They searched every meter of the mountain, every cave, every abandoned structure, every drainage ditch. Divers checked the reservoirs. Dogs were brought in to track scents. Nothing was found. Not a single shoe, not a single piece of clothing, not a single trace. The families were devastated. They printed millions of flyers and distributed them across the country. The boys' faces appeared on the sides of milk cartons, the first time South Korea had ever used this method. Television stations ran constant coverage. Psychics contacted the families, claiming visions of where the children might be. False leads poured in from every province. Some reported seeing the boys in Busan. Others swore they spotted them in Seoul. Each lead was investigated. Each one led nowhere. As weeks turned into months, darker theories emerged. Kidnapping was the primary suspicion. South Korea in 1991 was undergoing rapid industrialization. Child abduction cases, though rare, were not unheard of. Some investigators theorized that the boys had been taken by a human trafficker. Others suggested they had stumbled upon criminal activity on the mountain and been silenced. But there was no evidence for any of these theories. No ransom demand ever came. No witnesses ever came forward. The mountain had been searched so thoroughly that officials were confident the boys were not there. They expanded the search radius to surrounding cities, then surrounding provinces. Years passed. The case file grew thicker, but no closer to resolution. The families never stopped searching. The parents aged visibly. Their grief became a permanent feature of Korean media coverage. Every anniversary, the cameras returned. Every anniversary, the same question echoed through the empty mountain trails. Where are the frog boys? September 26th, 22. 11 years, 6 months, and 1 day after the boys disappeared. A Daegu resident named Woo Young-woo hiked up the southern slope of Waryong Mountain. He was looking for acorns. What he found instead were bones. Small bones. Human bones. Forensic teams arrived within hours. What they uncovered was deeply disturbing. The remains of all 5 boys were found together. They were clustered in a small area, roughly 2 meters by 2 meters. This was not a wide scatter pattern. The bodies had been placed there deliberately. The location was approximately 350 meters from the nearest houses. It was on the mountainside, but not deep in the wilderness. Search teams had passed through this area multiple times during the original investigation. The forensic examination revealed several chilling details. First, the boys' clothing was still partially intact, but the clothes were tied around the bodies in unnatural configurations. Shoelaces were knotted together. Garments were wrapped and bound in ways inconsistent with natural decomposition or animal activity. Second, and most critically, forensic pathologists found evidence of blunt force trauma on at least 2 of the skulls. Fracture patterns on the cranial bones were consistent with strikes from a hard object. This was not the result of a fall or natural accident. The boys had been struck. A bullet fragment was also reportedly found at the site. This detail was contested by different forensic teams, but it added another layer of horror to the finding. The manner of death was officially classified as homicide. Someone had killed these children. Someone had killed them on the mountain, or brought them to the mountain after killing them, and then that someone had left them there, while an entire nation searched for them just meters away. The question was no longer, where are the frog boys? The question was now far worse. Who killed them? And how did the killer watch the largest search in Korean history unfold? Knowing exactly where the bodies were hidden, with the discovery of the remains, investigators reopened the case with renewed urgency. But answers remained elusive. Several theories emerged, each more unsettling than the last. The first theory pointed to a local perpetrator, someone who knew Waryong Mountain intimately, someone who knew the search patterns, someone who could have concealed the bodies in a location that searchers would overlook. The binding of the clothing suggested someone who had restrained the children. The blunt force trauma suggested someone capable of extreme violence against minors. This was not a random accident. This was planned. The second theory suggested military involvement. In 1991, South Korea still had mandatory military service, and there were military installations near Daegu. Some theorists proposed that the boys had accidentally wandered onto restricted land and been killed, either deliberately or through an accident that was then covered up. The military denied any involvement. The third theory was perhaps the most disturbing. A serial predator operating in the Daegu area. In the early 1990s, South Korea was also grappling with the Hwasong serial murders, a string of killings that terrorized the nation. Could the Frog Boys have encountered a similar predator on the mountain? Profilers noted that the killer would have needed significant time to subdue 5 children. Even young children in a group of 5 would resist. This suggested either multiple perpetrators or someone the children trusted. Someone who could approach 5 boys without triggering alarm. A neighbor, a teacher, a familiar adult. The forensic evidence was degraded by 11 years of exposure. DNA samples were largely unusable. The bullet fragment could not be conclusively matched to any weapon. The knot patterns on the clothing could not definitively prove restraint versus natural tangling during decomposition. Every lead branched into another dead end. Investigators had fragments of a puzzle, but the picture they formed was too incomplete to prosecute anyone. On March 25, 2006, the statute of limitations on the Frog Boys case expired. 15 years after the boys vanished, the law said the case was closed. No one could ever be charged. Even if the killer walked into a police station and confessed, they could not be prosecuted. The families were shattered. They had waited 15 years for justice. They received nothing. The case left permanent scars on South Korean society. It exposed catastrophic failures in the nation's missing persons infrastructure. In response, South Korea reformed its child protection laws and established new protocols for missing children investigations. The boys' disappearance directly led to changes that would protect future generations. But for the families of Woo, Kyo-won, Kyo Ho-yeon, Kim Yong-gyu, Park Shan-in, and Kim Jong-sik, reform was not justice. Their sons were murdered. Their sons were left on a mountainside for 11 years. And the person who did it, that person is still out there, possibly still living in Daegu, possibly still walking past the memorial that now stands at the base of Hwasong Mountain. The Frog Boys case asks us a question we cannot answer. How does someone kill 5 children? In broad daylight, on an election day, on a mountain surrounded by homes, and simply walk away? How does that person live with themselves for 35 years? And the most terrifying question of all, if the killer could do this once and never be caught, did they ever do it again? Some mountains keep their secrets. Hwasong Mountain kept its for 11 years. But the truth about what happened on March 26, 1991, that secret may last forever. Frog Boy's case remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries in Korean history. 5 children, 1 mountain, 0 answers. If this story disturbed you, it should, because somewhere the person responsible is still breathing. Subscribe to Dark Archive, because the darkest stories are the ones that never end. Hit the bell icon. The next episode drops soon, and trust me, you are not ready for it.